This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com. I'm not going to read this out loud, this tribute to superstar Billy Graham, who passed away a year ago today by his wife, Valerie, because I'm still upset over his death, and I don't think I could read it without being emotional, but let's think about Billy Graham today on the anniversary of his death. He was a great person. Now, speaking of Billy Graham, with his ups and down relationship with Vince McMahon over the years, I wonder what he would have been thinking about during this whole lawsuit situation. There's a lot in this week's Observer about the whole Janel Grant Vince McMahon lawsuit and WWE's response. But let's go over to some of the stuff that McMahon's attorneys have been saying about Grant and her allegations. Apparently, the email exchanges between McMahon and Grant took place a long time ago, and McMahon had deleted the email exchanges. His attorneys are saying that she purposely did not file what she said in those email exchanges, only McMahon's side. And they're bringing up that if this goes to court in discovery, she's going to have to show both sides of those text messages because she presumably has both sides according to his lawyers. If she it's not like, I mean, I'm sure you could delete what you said and just save what they said, but I mean that it's suspicious for sure that she's not showing his sides. McMahon's attorneys are also saying that her trying to claim she was still grieving over her parents' deaths at the time of this relationship. Apparently, Grant's father passed away 2 years before she met McMahon and had been in a retirement home prior to that. She was not taking care of him. And prior to that, the mother had died years earlier. So to try and claim she's grieving over her parents' death and is, I mean, his lawyers are saying that's bullshit, basically. Apparently, she was living with her fiance during the whole time of the affair, according to McMahon's attorneys, as well as her affairs with Laurinaitis and others. Grant's lawyers are trying to claim that they lived together but weren't together, which is just weird for that period of time. And these were luxury apartment buildings formerly owned by Donald Trump. They were only living 4 floors under Vince, which, of course, the higher you are in a luxury building, the more they cost. Um, Basically, McMahon's side is also claiming that saying she was forced into the non-disclosure agreement uh, is a little like unbelievable because she actually negotiated the agreement to be for $3 million. It was originally only $1, and she had lawyers representing her. So for her to keep claiming she's being trafficked and all this stuff, I mean, why would she go to lawyer? Like, she's fine talking to lawyers about getting money, but she's not fine talking to the cops. That to me, that's weird. So McMahon's points out that she had Jonathan M. Shapiro of Action Law Partners representing her, and Jerry McDivitt was representing McMahon at the time during these settlement conferences that took place in Stamford, Connecticut. So, I mean, are these lawyers also under duress? And again, they negotiated it from 1 million to 3 million. Apparently, the non-disclosure agreement states, quote, "If any of the confidentiality obligations of this agreement are ever contended to be unenforceable by Grant or are found to be unenforceable by any tribunal, Grant agrees that she shall return all monies paid pursuant to this agreement to McMahon." So it should be interesting to note Grant could end up owing the $1 million that she did collect from McMahon, as well as attorney fees. This lawsuit or arbitration, which it very well could go to arbitration, does not go in her favor. Sorry, McMahon's argument is that when she broke the confidentiality agreement, allegedly, he was no longer required to pay anything above the 1 million he initially paid, and the $1 million in theory should be returned to him. And he is stating that she was coerced into signing the agreement, will likely not hold up in court, given that she had a lawyer and negotiated up on the original offer. WWE's response to Grant's allegations is, quote, "The language is clear and unconditional. Not only are Grant's allegations squarely within the scope of the arbitration provisions, but the agreement also expressly commits to arbitration the issue of arbitrarily itself." So, end quote. WWE is basically saying the non-disclosure agreement is supposed to be arbitrated. They also brought up that McMahon, above the $1 million he paid to Grant, and above all the gifts he bought Grant and the job he gave Grant, he also gave her $10,000 in legal fees. WWE is saying that the $500,000 that McMahon was scheduled to pay Grant February 1st, 2023, was under the condition that, quote, "all confidentiality obligations to Grant under this agreement are compelled with or are complied with," end quote. So they're saying the same thing as McMahon, basically, that the second payment was missed in McMahon's view because she did not comply with a non-disclosure agreement. So I mean, there's a lot of holes in her case, seemingly. She was an actress. There doesn't seem to be any pictures of her online past 2006, which is really weird. There's only the young, innocent pictures of her. She's 43 now, apparently. Dana White did an interview saying TKO is planning to run Power Slap Fridays, UFC Saturdays, WWE on Sundays, to save on costs. You'd have to think that SmackDown would also be on Fridays, all in the same city. Apparently, Saudi Arabia's chairman of General Entertainment is wanting to bring Royal Rumble or WrestleMania there in 2026 or 2027. They certainly have the money to do that. They also say the pay-per-views from the UFC there are gonna get bigger and bigger. Everything's about money these days. In AEW news, Will Hobbs had knee surgery for a torn patella tendon, is just starting therapy. He had the surgery 3 weeks ago. As a cost-cutting measure, AEW is going to be taping Collision and Ring of Honor, which they should really just scrap Ring of Honor at this point. They're moving Ring of Honor to the same location, Arlington, Texas, just outside of Dallas, where you got to pay tolls to get to, in my experience. So many tolls in the US, a lot more than in Canada. That's one of my I love the US. I would rather live there in the warm weather, but I have to say you guys have tolls everywhere. It's brutal. Anyways, they're moving to a just over 2,000 seat sports center in Arlington, Texas for a 6 or 7 week period in this summer. Obviously, Collision has been struggling to draw houses. Dave Meltzer's bringing up, well, they're probably getting a deal on this, and it's a smaller venue, obviously less tarping, which I'm sure when you tarp like 80% of arenas off, like they seemingly have been doing, going to 20,000 arenas, drawing between 1,500 and in the best cases 6,000. I mean, it's got to cost money to have the people to tarp those arenas. Um, Meltzer's saying after the first 2 or 3 weeks, it's gonna be really hard to sell more than 1,000 tickets in that venue because even if they're not making ticket prices as high, it's hard to draw people week after week. Ricky Starks and Sammy Guevara have apparently been pitching ideas to be brought back to AEW, but they're sitting at home getting paid right now. Sammy Guevara has been off suspension for 2 months, according to Meltzer. Jeff Hardy is still off, and weeks ago, Matt Hardy said Jeff had been cleared to return. There's a lot of lost AEW wrestlers that are just sitting at home getting paid. They could seriously cut 40 to 50 wrestlers and be better off, way better off, as far as just like they have so many wrestlers, they can't get them over. They just can't get them over. And here's the other weird thing, they have all these wrestlers under contract. Think about this, guys. Whenever they go to these towns, they use locals. They use locals. Why don't you use the people that you have under contract? Because for the locals, you gotta pay them, and it's like, why give locals TV time? Even the guy that recently got fired from Dark Order, he's from this area. Stu Grayson. He was still under contract during most of the recent Canadian tours, and he's from this area. Yet they didn't use him on the shows. They brought in like locals instead. Why, when you have all these guys under contract, you still bring in, for instance, the show in London, Ontario, where they brought in Zack Ryder to face Edge. Keep in mind, Chris Jericho and Moxley were advertised that show. They were not on the show. But no, we get Zack Ryder when you have so many wrestlers sitting at home that are already being paid. So why give Zack Ryder a one-off payment? Like it doesn't, as CM Punk said, they don't run AEW like a business. It's crazy. It's, the Dynamite next week in Bakersfield, California only has about 1,500 tickets out, including comps. Which, by the way, I've been to that arena before as an extra for WWE when King Booker was crowned, as I discussed in my Hannibal Memories draft book playlist that you can look up on here. I tell all sorts of behind the scenes stories from my WWE extra jobs. I mean, AEW false advertised this week, by the way, that Rampage was going to be taped after Dynamite. Not that anyone would care, but they did advertise it as that. In the end, they did not get Rampage after Dynamite in Washington. They're getting Rampage after Collision in Oregon this week. Why do they false advertise so much? They false advertise Moxley for every single Canadian show this year, which is like 6 or 7. And they false advertise Jericho for most of those shows. I think Jericho only appeared on a couple of those Canadian shows, and there's a hell of a lot more that they false advertise. It's just stupid. Why do you false advertise people? And by God, do their fans ever stick up for them? By God, do their fans ever stick up for them? I got so much heat the last couple weeks for pointing out that they're false advertising wrestlers. I'm just telling the fans, if you're buying a ticket to see Jericho because he's on the poster, it doesn't mean he's going to be there. Or Moxley, I mean, I'm turned off by him because he didn't show up to any of the Canadian shows. I mean, I don't know if it's his fault, if for some reason he can't get into Canada, or if it's just AEW putting him on the posters without actually booking him. But it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. By the way, on the upcoming AEW pay-per-view, Moxley is wrestling Takashita, which who the frig cares about that? Like in Tony Khan's world, people other than smart marks care about these all the like it's one thing if you have like Forbidden Door once a year and you're not seeing all these New Japan guys all year. But like when they're on every show, there's these New Japan guys. It's like and which by the way, Tony Khan, I wonder if he's just gonna buy New Japan soon enough because their business is like at an all-time low right now, and he's taking all of their top stars. So at some point, he may as well just buy New Japan. I mean, he's prioritizing New Japan over AEW. Moxley wrestled on New Japan the night that he no-showed AEW in Vancouver. The Young Bucks were also on the New Japan show. Eddie Kingston reportedly broke his leg on that show. So you're letting him break a leg on a show that's not even your own, so you can't even make money off of the footage of it. And Jack Perry was there too. And you have one of your biggest crowds in a long time in Vancouver. It's weird. I mean, very, very weird. Anyways, I really should stop thinking about AEW. It gives me a bad headache. Speaking of New Japan, that pay-per-view had 3,000 fans and was over 5 hours long. And again, it was their debut in Vancouver, the second biggest city, or probably the third biggest city in Canada. I think Montreal's bigger. Toronto's the biggest, but it was a debut in Vancouver. They actually had a great crowd, and a lot of their main eventers or more known wrestlers are wrestling in front of half the size of a crowd for a different company. Bob Bruggers, who was famously in a plane accident with Ric Flair, passed away May 10th at 80 years old. Afa Noah, WWE Hall of Famer, head shrinker Afa, 81. Wild Samoan successfully had an aortic valve heart surgery on May 9th. Uh, I know his kids, Lloyd and Afa Jr. Great family. I wish I had trained with Afa, to be honest. They seem to have had, when they had their school, the best connection, one of the best places for connections as far as getting people jobs. If anyone's thinking of training to be a wrestler, definitely make sure it's somewhere that has connections. Gable Stevenson had a tryout with the Buffalo Bills on the 15th. He's expected to meet with several more NFL teams. To be honest, I know when Brock Lesnar tried out for NFL, his name was a lot bigger than Gable Stevenson. Gable Stevenson might be a better athlete, but he hasn't played football at all. How how good of a football player he'll be, I don't know. I guess it'd be good publicity to say you have Olympic gold medalists on your team. And football pays more than MMA in general, but he also has a potential MMA option. Money in the Bank, July 6th in Toronto, has 16,000 tickets out, still over 1,000 tickets left. Raw right here in Ottawa, following Monday, already has over double what AEW did here a couple months ago. They're at 6,128 tickets out. So obviously the Raw and SmackDown sellout streaks are long over with. SmackDown in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Well, they're calling it a sellout. So maybe I spoke too soon. 7,851. Now again, that's a sellout for whatever setup they had. Not a bad crowd. Raw in Greenville, South Carolina, 8,000, which that's a historic wrestling city. So not breaking the 10,000 marks, but decent crowds. In MMA news, the PFL fighter Ryan Bader is going to be in the Smashing Machine movie, which is being filmed in Vancouver. For the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, also in Arlington, Texas, July 20th, they have a $2 million ticket package where you'll get seats next to the ring, which is crazy. You'll be invited to a pre-fight locker room photo with your group with Paul and Tyson, gloves signed by Paul and Tyson, private green room, an open bar and restaurant for the entire group, and other activities during the week. Well, Texas, there's a lot of rich people. I did talk about Texas, by the way, in my draft book memories. In my real book, I can go in a lot more detail about Texas and the kind of money some people have in Texas. because I witnessed some crazy spending when I was in Texas. Thanks for the tip, Morton Goldberg talent. You'd think that much money would get Vince McMahon a hotter chick. No, no comment there. No comment at all. I mean, a lot of people said he could have got himself like I won't even say anything. But it's safe to say that whole thing was a big mistake for McMahon. R.I.P. superstar Graham. What about calls Janel Grant a ring rat? That's what about says. MR Vince needs to spend a little time for the mustache and dye job. I don't know if he still even has the mustache, to be honest with you. What about says she probably wasn't even close to her parents. Who knows? There's a lot of weird stuff in that case. She did write him some very odd letters, that's for sure. She was used to get him out of the WWE. I'm sure there could be a lot of conspiracy theories on the whole Janelle Grant situation. But to be honest, let's look at what she got out of it. You can see there's a whole list of gifts she got. Tens of thousands of dollars, maybe over 100,000 worth of gifts. She got a job for numerous years, making decent money that she herself says she wasn't qualified for. She got $1 million, was supposed to get 3 million, but somehow it leaked out. And again, there's a lot of holes in her case, a lot of red flags betrayed. But I'm not saying either of them are innocent, but there's a lot of red flags in the case. And yeah. WWE Vince and Laurinaitis seem to be standing together. That's for sure. Yeah, Saudi Arabia. I mean, the money talks. I've never been there. I don't know that much about it. They certainly have different views from what I've seen than Western society. But I think they've even allowed, I mean, they used to have a rule that gay people would be chemically castrated, for instance, and I think they've let some gay people into Saudi Arabia since for wrestling. So, I mean, they've modified some rules for that. I don't know who you're talking about there. I hope it's not Billy Graham. Someone says the snake will finally find his way out of this. Well, it's going to go to arbitration where it'll either be settled or a resolution will happen. Most likely, they could also deny arbitration and it will go to a lawsuit. What about Tony just spending daddy's money? Yeah, he definitely has. I mean, I've heard some people that know him describe him as an egomaniac. And again, AEW got its lowest rating since June 2020 this week. So him featuring himself in that pathetic angle certainly didn't help. Jay Miller says they use locals because no one wants the job, and again, he seems to be like a pushover for talent. I mean, look at another lost wrestler. Do they even use Rusev anymore? I heard that the reason they don't use Rusev much was because he doesn't like to job. And it's like, does Tony not stand his ground, or does he just say, okay, well, if you're not going to job, we're just going to sit you at home where you can collect your paycheck? Can I get a US work visa? Yes, but I would have to pay for it myself. I can work for myself in YouTube in the US though, and I do plan. The weather's actually getting nicer in Canada, but I do plan on going to the US once it gets cold here a lot, later this fall and this winter. AEW content has zero wrestling psychology. Frank Duke's interview? Yes, I am going to interview Frank Dukes. Funny that you mentioned that because I am going to get a Frank Dukes interview very soon. And if you and I just watched Bloodsport on Tubi. And that reminded me to reach out to him again. I was supposed to do one years ago, right around the time something happened, and then I got distracted. But I am going to do Frank Dukes interview. Rusev not wanting to job is like a janitor not wanting to mop. Wrestling is you know what? People give me hassle for not wanting to job. I've never said no to jobbing ever. The only time that I've had issues with jobbing is when I'm investing in a company and they want me to job and I'm not they're not actually paying me. It's on like kind of a bargain deal and the job makes no sense. In those cases I'll say no. But if I'm getting hundreds of thousands a year to wrestle a handful of times like Rusev, I would never say no to job. Like I'd gladly take one of these AEW contracts. They'll never give me one. But trust me, I am better. This is a fact. You guys can call me arrogant or not. I am better known in wrestling than a hell of a lot of AEW talent. That's a fact. I'm known in wrestling. Steve Austin knows who I am. Hulk Hogan knows who I am. Fans know who I am. I would easily job to people, but they're not going to give me that because I'm not a politically correct person. But like, you would never see me complaining about sitting at home getting money. My shoot job, which I do because I love it, I get 17 an hour. So to get hundreds of thousands of dollars to sit at home and have to go and job to people, which is still fun. You still get to wrestle, which is a fun job. I mean, I don't know what these people complain about. They're spoiled. They're spoiled. They didn't pay enough dues. I think I may have paid more dues than any other wrestler. Don't believe me? Read my draft books entries. Wrestlers have it crazy easy now. Not to mention the medical assistance they get in the back if you're hurt. You don't get that on most independent shows. You really don't. And money guaranteed, whether you wrestle or not. It's awesome. Anyways, God bless all you. I'm gonna come back with a quick report on Tammy Sitch. She has 2 lawsuits against her. I'm doing that as a separate report. Have a good weekend if you don't watch that.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news.